Well met, adventurers! 'Tis I, Nathaniel Gomezian, shopkeeper and proprietor of Gaming Treasure Chest, and today we're going to be going through a D&D puzzle. So yes, finally some D&D content on this channel, am I right? But yes, we're going to be going through a puzzle which I recently ran my players through. It was a lot of fun, and I actually think it is a really fun, well thought out puzzle, if I do say so myself. So I'll be going through step by step what happened. So for context, this dungeon was actually made by chronomancers. So for those people who don't know, time wizards is basically the easiest way to sum them up. So I'm only be going through the puzzle part of the dungeon. There were other elements to this dungeon, but this was like the main kind of puzzle which was in there, so I'm going to be going through that today. If you want to hear more about the other elements of the dungeon, then by all means, leave a comment down below, and who knows, maybe I might do a whole video on the whole dungeon. But the puzzle, that's what it's, and we're going to call this the Time Door Puzzle, just because it makes sense when you understand what the hell it is. So the Time Door puzzle is basically set into 3 rooms is how I ran it. You technically could do more, depends on what ideas you have, because I will say that there is many rooms for interpretation with this, and I just thought it was a really fun idea and a great puzzle, so, you know. But we're going to be going through this room by room. So the first room that your players walk into is a room where it's got stone floors, stone walls, it's got sconces on them, which have got like glowing crystals, which is what is keeping the room lit. There is chains, and there's a desk. Across the way from them, directly from where they've come in, is a door. Now what happens is when the players walk into this room, they see a shadowy figure, just like basically a humanoid figure all in shadows, like shadowy. And as they come into the room, that shadow figure immediately runs to the door, which is across the way from them, gets a key out, opens the door, and leaves. Now this happens like immediately as soon as your players walk in. It's very hard for them to have time to react. So one of your players might try to do something like a whole person or something along those lines, in which case you might have to roll an initiative to see who goes first, whether or not the player can actually get it off before the character runs into the other room. But most of the time, as you're saying this, you're just basically saying that the shadowy figure has immediately run out of the room. So you can give your players time to react, but if not, they run through, get through the door, and lock the door behind them. So the players can come into this room, as I said, desk, chains on the wall, and if they try the door will not open, which is across the way from them. Now, also in this room are 2 doors, from which are one on the left and one on the right. So both of these doors have got carvings on them. Basically almost look identical. It's a triangle on top of a triangle. The one on the left has got kind of a line which is going to on the top triangle, and the one on the right has got a line going to the bottom triangle. Hopefully I've put these images on screen so you know what the hell I'm talking about. If they go through the door to their left, the second that one player goes and opens the door and goes to walk through, the entire party is sucked into that room. So you might have to do what I did for a little bit of fun, was a constitution check to see whether or not they throw up. Nothing really bad happens if they fail. So it's just basically thrown up. But if they get a good roll, and just say like they were able to like keep their fortitude, and just being sucked through the room didn't really matter to them. Every single time they go from one room to another, the entire party will be sucked through. So you can do this constitution check maybe once or twice, and then say that the players are basically like ready for it and they're expecting it. So you don't have to continue to do it. It was just a little bit of fun on that side of things. So if they go through the door to their left, they will find the room exactly as it was the previous room, only more pristine. The chains are glimmering, the desk is brand new, and then also see a shadowy child in this room. Now the shadowy child can understand the party but can't actually communicate with them. It has no mouth, because it's made of shadows. And I will say it's a magical construct of shadows, so it's not actually a real child. This is very important to note. But yes, that's what they find in that room. If they head back through the door that they've just come through, they will see the shadowy figure of the adult again run to the door and unlock it and run through. Now, they go through the door to the right, they will find the room a lot more dirtier. The chains will be rusted, the desk would be slightly dilapidated, a little bit like a kind of worn, because this is the future. Because this is where the doors of time come into it. So one door leads to the future, one door leads to the past, and then the middle is the present. I will say in both the past and the future, there's only the door which goes back into the present. There are no doors which go forward, like go directly along from the player. So this is where the kind of like puzzle gets in, is that they can obviously go to the past and sort things out, or they can go to the future. And this is just establishing how the puzzle is going to go through as we go through from room to room. As I said, this is made up of 3 rooms. Now onto the solution of room 1. Now it does actually have multiple solutions. Let's go through them. So if your players go to the room to the right, the future, if they check the desk, then they will find the key in one of the drawers. Now, as I said, it's a bit of a dilapidated desk, so like it might take them a little bit to get into it, because it let's say like a locking mechanism on the door, which on the drawer might be a little bit like a but if they get in, then they will find the key, because we can say that the shadow figure has come back in at some point and put the key into the desk drawer. Now, if they go to the past, numerous different things that they can do. So this is where we find out how crazy, sadistic, or just like how genuinely nice your players are. We'll get into it. So one solution that your players can do is that they can move the desk and put the chains like across the room, so they can move the desk in front of the door, put the chains across, because when they go back into the present, into the middle room, then all that stuff will be set up there, and as the shadow figure tries to run, it will have all those things to try and get past, so I have to move the desk out of the way of the door, the chains, like having to get through them. So that is one thing, so your players can then stop the shadow figure and get the key off of them. If your players are massively sadistic, and I will say this channel does not condone these kind of actions, but technically your players can chain up the small child, which I said, magical construct of a shadowy child, not a real child. Very important to know this. So there's no punishment or things that are being felt in this. It has no feelings. So if they go back into the room, the adult will be chained up and they can get the key from them to progress through into the next room. What my players did was actually none of those things. Actually, it was not something that I expected them to do, because as I said, the child can't actually react to them. It can understand them, but it can't actually talk back to them. But my players decided to talk to the child, which I said, actually thinking about it, how my players are, it's a very nice thing to do. They're very good people. So I should have expected this, to be fair. But they spoke to the child and they were very nice and courteous and being like, oh, don't worry, and they said, we'll see you in the future. You're going to see us in the future. Don't be alarmed. We're going to look exactly the same as we do now. And do not worry. And they actually rolled a very good persuasion check. And I said, the way they were was nice and courteous. And so when they walked into the room for the present, then the shadowy figure was waiting there and it saw them and it kind of greeted them with a wave. And they walked over to him and he handed them the key, which allowed them to progress. So that is how my players got through room 1 of this puzzle. But as I said, there are multiple different ways. If there's any ways that you could think of to try and get through this puzzle that are different from what I've said, then by all means, put them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what kind of ideas and that you would have to try and get through this room. So as your players walk into the second room, what they find is that there's a door yet again directly across the way from them that if they try to open, doesn't open. There is a keyhole yet again, like in the previous room, and you will see that there are the doors to the left and to the right, yet again with the same symbols marking on them, letting you know which one is the past and which one is the future. Now, in this room, there is on the left hand side, there is a waterfall which comes out of the same wall that the door is on that they've got to progress through. There is a waterfall which goes down into a kind of little stream which stops before you get the door, which is on the left. There is also a plinth in front of them as they come in. On top of that is a rotten apple. I will also say in this room that the ground is mud, basically. There is no, it's not like a stone floor like in the previous room. It is normal earth as the ground for this room. If your players look around this room and get a good perception, then they will see that there is a key directly in the ceiling, but the ceiling is very high. Although I will say, obviously, this is no problem for anyone who has the flight spell, and there is no problem for an Aarakocra. So I will say that you can, if your players have got a way of being able to get up basically vertically high, vertically to a high place, to be able to get the key, because the key is embedded in the ceiling, you need to give it a good pull. It is it would take more of a pull than a mage hand. Like a mage hand would not on its own be able to take the key out of the ceiling. So I will say that's why you'd need somebody with like the flight spell or Aarakocra, or I'm sure there's many other ways to go directly vertical to be able to grab this key. So that's one way that your players can solve this puzzle. But obviously, if they go to the past, if they go through the door to the left, then they will see the plinth has got a pristine apple on it. And if they go to the door to the right, to the future, then it is literally dust on top of this plinth, and I said like the room is not in a good state. So yes, the solution is pretty simple for this one in terms of time wise. You can go into the past, get the apple seeds, put them in the earth. What they do have to do, I will say, is because obviously my players did that at first and went to the room to the present, and the apple hadn't, like the tree hadn't started growing because it needs water. So your players in the first room, in the room to the past, have got to somehow get the water, so that it's gonna be allowing there to be water going to this plant. So what my group did was they dug a trench from the stream of water, like to get it so that it was going to the apple and could allow it to grow. Now obviously you guys can decide whatever you want to do with that, like some kind of intricate pipe system if your players want to do that or whatever, but so like obviously the plant is gonna need water. Then so they go through into the present. The tree has started to grow, but it is not yet big enough for them to be able to reach the key. They have to go into the door to the future, the door to the right, which will allow them to, when they go in there, if they've done everything, it'll be a fully grown apple tree. Your players can then climb that tree using athletics or whatever you want to do to climb that tree and be able to reach up and grab the key out of the ceiling, and then move through back into the middle to where the door is to unlock it to get through to the third room. So the third room, as your players enter this room, is... Hello, Moose. What are you doing here? You want to come up? You want to come up? There you go. Hello. Hello, you. What are you doing? Huh? What are you doing? Moose. You have no care for the fact that Daddy is trying to film a video right now, do you? You care not for this. It's not important to you. I know it's not important to you, but it's important to Daddy. So if you don't mind, we have got a video to film. So good day, Moose. Good day. Sorry about that. You know, doggo. That is Cosmos, our dog. Lovely dog. But anyway, let's get back to this. So the third room, as your players walk into the third room, it's a much more bigger room than the previous rooms. It's got pillars, and at the very end of the room is a pile of gold which has a adult red dragon on top of it. Now, it is a red dragon which is made of shadows. Now, a bit, as I said, it doesn't have to be a red dragon. You can make it whichever kind of dragon you want. Just when I ran it, I did it as I just put it as the stats for a red dragon adult. But you can have it as any kind you want. What's important about it is not exactly a red dragon. It is made of shadows. It's not a shadow dragon, because I know that there are things like that, but that's not what it is. But it's made of shadows because it was made, like, this dragon has technically been made by the chronomancers to lord over this bit of the dungeon. So it's not exactly a real dragon. It is still kind of like a magic construct, like the shadow figure from room 1. That said, you can have it as any kind of dragon you want. But basically, for my dungeon when I ran it, it was an adult red dragon. Now, if your players go into the room to the left, obviously to the room to the past, then they will find the room, as I said, looks a bit more pristine, and there's a much more smaller stack of gold on top of which is a wormling red dragon. So obviously, like, you know, depending on how much leveled your party is will depend on what they decide to do here, whether or not, if they're quite low level, obviously they're going to go for the wormling, or they could go for the adult red dragon. If they go to the room to the right, which is obviously the room to the future, they will find an ancient red dragon in front of them. So it depends on how good your party is or what level they are, depends on what they want to go for here. Now obviously, if they go for the ancient red dragon, it is a much more larger room of gold, and there is going to be magical items in there, like that you guys can decide whatever you want to have in there as like special items, but there is a lot more that you can get from there. So obviously it's risk and reward. Now, here's one thing I will say. But this is where, if your players are leveled enough to take on the ancient red dragon, that they have to be careful, because if they beat the legendary red dragon, get all of the gold, get the magic items and such, and then decide, you know what, let's go to the present and beat the adult red dragon and get that gold. If they decide to do that, then the gold which they accumulated from the ancient red dragon, they actually lose, or magic items, any magic items they got, they lose, because actually the dragon wouldn't have become that, because they killed, if they kill it in the adult red dragon stage, it never would have become the ancient red dragon and accumulated that gold and weapons. So that is something that your players need to be careful about, and if they understand how time and causality works, that they might already realise that. But if they don't and try to get too greedy, then that is actually technically like a little thing which like might come up on them. But once they beat the red dragon, whichever type they decide to beat, the shadows disperse and a key drops, which allows them to go through into the last room of this dungeon. While editing this, I realised I forgot to mention that unlike the previous rooms in this dungeon, room 1 and 2, that when you get to the dragon, whichever one you kill, like the past, present or future, there is a door which continues onward no matter what. So you don't, if you kill the ancient dragon, you don't have to then go through and try and get through the door of the adult red dragon, or if you kill the wormling, you don't have to try and get through the adult one. The door does go on from whichever room that you go on from, and it always goes to the same room, which is like the last room of this dungeon, regardless of which time you technically were on, because, you know, chronomancers, it all, like, they can do whatever they want time manipulation wise to make it so this last room is the same no matter which one that you're coming from. So just thought that was very important to add. So that was the time door puzzle. Please let me know what you think down in the comment section down below, as well as like any way that you think that you'd get through the different rooms, any kind of things that you could add. As I said, this kind of dungeon, the idea of going into the past and the future, there is many different things that you can do with it. Those are just the 3 rooms that I decided to do. But obviously you can decide to do whatever you want. And I'd love to hear some of your ideas as well. So if you want to post those down in the comment section down below, please do that as well. And thank you for watching us. If you want to see more content like this, then please, again, let me know. And if you enjoyed it, then why not hit that follow button, subscribe button, whatever the hell it is. And we can have more adventures together. Also, if you want to check out the Etsy store, so the links are down below as well as on the channel somewhere. Make sure to use the coupon code YouTube64 to be able to get yourself a lovely discount. If you want to try and see any of the lovely things that I have on offer, do not feel forced, it's just your options, and hopefully see you in the next video, adventurers. Until next time.